Good afternoon. This is the Town of Ayer Executive By Board meeting for Thursday, May 20th, 2021 at 2 p.m. This is an open session remote participation meeting agenda. Due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, Governor Baker issued an emergency order temporarily suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law. Public bodies otherwise governed by the OML are temporarily relieved from the requirement that meetings be held in public places, open and physically accessible to the public, so long as measures are taken to ensure public access to the body's deliberations through adequate alternative means. This meeting will be broadcast live on Channel 8 and on Zoom. The public may participate remotely by following the call-in information on the bottom of the live broadcast screen. For the Zoom meeting information relating to remote participation, please contact Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager, at atm@ayer.ma.us or 978-772-8220, extension 100, prior to the meeting. In accordance with the open meeting law provisions, the members of the Executive By Board present this afternoon for the meeting, Selectman Scott Hood, Mr. Pat Diamond, Chair of the FinCom, Ms. Lisa Gabri, Finance Manager, Ms. Carly Antonellis, Assistant Town Manager, and I'm Robert Pomprian, the Town Manager. The agenda is the call to order, the review and approval of the previous meeting minutes, the FY21 budget CARES funding update, review of FY22 budget process in town meeting, discussion on American Recovery Funding, review and discussion of new business items that have been before the By Board, and any new business that the By Board may have for today, and then the scheduling of the next meeting. So with that, the first item is the approval of the previous meeting minutes, which were from Thursday, April 15th at 2 p.m., which was sent to everybody. One just correction that was brought to my attention by Barbara Tierney on the motion to accept the minutes. It says December 10th, 2019. Obviously, that was an error. It should read the draft meeting minutes from March 25th of 2021. I just wanted to point that, and that will be corrected. Are there any other edits, comments, or questions on the draft minutes?
I didn't have any, thank you.
No, me neither.
Okay, if there's,
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I
With the
second the motion.
correction.
okay, a motion has been made by Carly Antonellis and seconded by Pat Diamond to approve the April 15th to 2021 minutes. All those in favor, it'll be roll call. Lisa Gabri,
Aye.
Pat Diamond,
Aye.
Scott Hood,
Aye.
Carly Antonellis,
Aye.
Mark Smith. Okay, Robert Pomprian says aye. So the minutes are approved. Thank you. Okay, as has been a standing item for the By Board, the next item is just a brief update on the FY21 budget that we're in right now, and tied to that, a CARES funding update. From my vantage point as the town manager, the FY21 budget remains in good shape, no major deviations or changes on that, which is good. And I know that Ms. Gabri continues to do an excellent job processing and working with the CARES funding. So with that, Lisa, I don't know if you want to make a brief update related to FY21 and CARES.
I'll back up and just say revenues are running on target. All the expenditures are running on target, with the exception of IT may need a small reserve fund transfer, but we have to just watch. We're gonna watch what happens for the rest of the month and a half that's left of the year. But other than that, everything's on target or less than target, which means there will be some kind of free cash for the end of the year. But as far as CARES Act, I'm working on round 4 of CARES Act reporting. I filed the first 2 applications for FEMA, and we still haven't received any money, but apparently that's not unusual. According to the fire chief, he's talked to other fire chiefs, and they're in area towns, and they have not received any FEMA money to date yet as well. But I'm going to move ahead and file a third application as well as one for vaccines, because they're using the application for vaccines is separate from the other vaccine, the other FEMA program. So we're moving right along. I mean, as far as I know, CARES Act continues at least through the end of this fiscal year, but I'm pretty sure it continues at least through September. And we also have, American Recovery Act funds coming to us very soon. And I know that's on the agenda, so I'm not going to talk about that anymore.
Great. Thank you. Any questions from the buy board from Ms. Cabri on FY21 or the CARES funding? Okay. Item number 4, as we generally do at the conclusion of the town meeting and the budget process, number 4 is a review of the FY22 budget process and town meeting as it related to the budget and so forth. I'll just offer initially, first of all, I want to thank everybody for all of their hard work on another successful budget process and successful town meeting. It's greatly appreciated. I know everybody on this is intimately involved with that. I would say that our budget process that we've established as far as the calendar has worked very well. Obviously, the last 15 months, the challenge with COVID, there were some hiccups on that. Also, this was the first year due to the bylaw change that town meeting was the 4th Monday in April. So we did lose from last year, even though it was delayed 2 weeks from our normal cycle. I think that the schedule we have in place works. I think for FY23, the good news is hopefully we continue to move out of the pandemic, which will be helpful. Secondly, we can now take into account and build in, because we've successfully gone through it, moving things up a couple of additional weeks with the change of the date for the town meeting. One other thing from my vantage point, and appreciate everybody's patience, this year, because of the pandemic, the contracts that we negotiated, they were started after the first of the year. They get delayed because of the pandemic, and we did get everything done on time, but it was right down to the 11th hour. In the schedule, just so the buy board knows, there are 3 contracts that will be up for negotiation upcoming. It'll be the fire department, the Department of Public Works, and the police superiors. We will start those without a doubt no later than November 1st, not after the New Year. Start early. And in that process, as we move forward, we have ground rules in the negotiations. We are going to add a provision where each side, and we do this anyway on the town side, but for the union side, when they submit proposals that have a potential financial impact, we're going to require that some of that financial analysis be done in advance for 2 reasons. One, they're making the request. They should know what the estimated cost impacts are. And also to have the unions do some of the work that our financial folks, some of the initial work, do such a great job on. My final point before I open it up to other thoughts, I think that in terms of the town meeting warrant and the information on that, this was the first year that we used the centralized web page for all things budget, all things warrant, and we put all of the supporting documents for each of the that existed for each of the warrant articles. I thought we got a lot of positive feedback on that, because folks who use a computer could go right to one location, get their warrant, the budget, any supporting documents, and so forth. So I think that was a good practice and a good idea. A special thanks to Carly Antonellis for really populating that and monitoring that. So I think that's another best practice that we should adopt as we move forward. So the final thing is, hopefully, as we move towards the fall town meeting in a year from now, obviously the COVID protocols we had to put in place will continue to lessen and make that experience, the remote room and so forth, which we did get down to a science eventually. Hopefully, some of those things may or may not be needed. So With that, that's sort of my initial thoughts. Other thoughts from folks on the buy board, either about the budget process, or the budget process as it relates to town meeting. Any other thoughts?
As usual, Robert, I thought you and your team did an excellent job, and it's been, and as it always is, a pleasure to participate.
Okay.
I
Anybody
have
else
not.
from the buy board?
I'll offer,
Hi,
just
Tom.
kind of reiterate, I think that everything went very smooth this time around, particularly with the challenges of the pandemic, kind of distracting people in other directions. The information that was presented was put together, was clear, it was concise, presented in a professional manner. So I think we really did a great job. The whole team at Town Hall really deserves a lot of kudos for that.
Okay, thank you. And we do have on the meeting, I see Mr. Jim O'Connor, our new moderator. Congratulations, Jim, on your election. And we look forward to working with Jim as far as his role as moderator with these meetings. So I think he'll have some ideas, and we'll have some further conversations as we prepare for the fall, which is generally not a lot of financial items, but obviously for next year. So again, welcome, Jim.
Thank you.
Okay, again, as we move forward, if there are any thoughts, as always, or ideas, this won't be the last time we'll be talking about it as we move forward. Number 5 is a discussion on the American Recovery Funding, or the APRA funding, as they call it. As folks are aware, the recent American Recovery Act that was passed is designed to provide federal relief to, of all things, towns as one of many entities related to COVID-19 impacts. Unlike the CARES funding, this is a direct funding to entities. It's not reimbursable, but there's a whole process which we're going to get to in a moment. And the funding is much more, from what we understand, can be used for a much wider spectrum of potential uses, including infrastructure and so forth. The challenge has been, we have been told that the town of Ayer is expected to receive between $2.2 and $2.8 million in this funding. The challenge, of course, is some of the information, the details on the guidelines remains still somewhat in process. And I did send the first email I sent. The second one, as you probably saw afterwards, had to do with counties. But the first email, there's going to be, again, another process and so forth. And I think we wanted to start the discussion. I'll have Lisa chime in a minute. Start the discussion as a town, ultimately, and this would go to the select board, and we want the FinCom's input and departments and so forth as we move forward, how we want to approach using this funding, what the strategy is going to be, but also there's going to be a whole another process and so forth in that. So we wanted to just start the initial discussion. Unfortunately, there's still going to be a lot of questions we're going to have to keep a question mark on when it has to do with parameters and so forth, because it remains delayed on some of these guidelines. So Lisa, did you want to first jump in on some of your initial thoughts or concerns regarding this?
Yes, I would like to chime in a little. So half of that, whatever, 2.2 to 2.8 is going to come very shortly. It gets requested for us by the state. The state requests the funds from the federal government and disperses them to the towns. Some cities will get money directly. They'll have to do their own requests, and certain counties will be doing their own requests. So we're going to have a ton of money coming in right away. The last I heard and read was that all of the money needs to be spent by 2024, I believe, the end of the fiscal year 2024. And that doesn't mean necessarily has to be paid for, but it has to be contracted or committed. There are in addition to things like to help prevent the spread of the disease, which is one of the ways you can use the money, you can also do a number of things for the community as far as housing, as far as being able to provide services for underprivileged people. And there also is certain infrastructure, not schools. Schools are getting their own sets of money. This infrastructure is specifically for water, sewer, and broadband. And we do have significant upgrades to the sewer system coming. And I, for one, don't know how we're going to be able to afford all those upgrades within the next 5 years without some kind of injection of money of some sort, or without a significant rate increase, which we're trying to avoid. So I would make, and it's been my opinion that we should at least use a certain amount of that money, say $1 million, towards sewer projects that are already started and off the ground. But I would say that there's, because it's such a vast, I would suggest that we maybe have a committee that includes housing, that includes economic and community development, that includes DPW, of course, because of infrastructure, and possibly even the schools, because even though we can't use it for infrastructure for the schools, there are some other reasons that it possibly can be used for schools. If they indeed need the money, we should at least ask if they want to be involved in this process. And I'm sure other people have other thoughts too, but those are my initial thoughts. The thing is, what I've read is that it's better to have a plan to use the money.
Mhm.
For instance, there is an area where you can pay public safety, for instance, a premium retro back to the start of COVID with this money. And I feel that and I'm not necessarily opposed to that. On the other hand, I feel that if there's a plan in place, we can reduce possibly the feeding frenzy that might go on. So I have read that you're better off having a plan in place, that the state is actually encouraging that. So that's my initial suggestions.
Real quick, one question, Lisa. Do you get a sense when you said the initial funding is going to be coming quickly? Have you been able to find a potential date on that? I know you just said it has.
No,
Okay.
I know the state has requested it. I don't know how long it will take for them to receive it. And they could have delayed it, but apparently they have chosen not to delay it.
Okay.
Is it possible that before the distribution, as is the want of the government in often cases, they say, oh, by the way, before we give you this, you have to tell us what your plan is for use?
No, I have not read that anywhere. It's just a highly recommended, and I agree with that. It's always better to have a plan, and then if you have to alter it a little, you alter it a little, but I feel like that's a lot of money to have available without a plan.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's very unlike the US government to be throwing dollar bills out the back of a convertible, so be interesting to
We
hear.
will, just like any federal money, we could get audited. I
Yeah,
mean, we have to keep records of what we're spending it on. It
Yeah.
has to be legitimate.
certainly.
Mhm.
Couldn't be in better hands, Lisa.
As long as I'm
Mark.
here.
I understand having a plan, but how can you have? Will there be a time whenever you'll know how much money you'll get?
Yes.
I imagine there will be.
Yeah. So, Mark, the two challenges right now, and we've been for the last couple months, and it's just frustrating. What we do know for sure, there's a lot of question marks. We know the range is between 2.2 and 2.8, but to your point, we have yet to get, is it 2.2? Is it 2.5? So we know the range, but what's the specific? And then secondly, on some of the guidelines and the parameters have yet to be fully fleshed out.
So you can plan, but you can't commit.
Not just yet. I mean,
Okay.
so we know that at minimum, we're gonna get 2.2, and on the maximum, 2.8.
Is it gonna be in one fell swoop or spread over 24 months? I mean, how's it gonna happen?
We're
Lisa,
supposed to get 50%.
so there's
Okay.
gonna be initial 50%, right? And
Yes.
So you could theoretically, if you have a good feeling that you're going to get at least 2.2, you can commit to 2.2, right?
Mhm. Yeah, we could, because
Okay,
that would be the minimum.
okay,
I would almost, I think the approach may be, I understand having a plan, but possibly identifying the areas where we know we have large expenses, but we have a little more flexibility into before we get the final number. And what comes to mind with that is more of just water and sewer. I know, Mark has brought to the select board a couple of potential sewer redesigns, et cetera, that may have to occur over on the Westford Road side. So I think, that was kind of my thought. It wasn't as extensive as Lisa's proposal, but, just kind of looking at those items that would, I guess, impact people's day-to-day lives and expenses, because if we have to pay for the sewer within the rates, and that's going to affect people's pocketbooks directly.
Scott, agreed. I think that definitely there's no question in the water sewer area. And as Lisa mentioned, and as we all know, there are some significant infrastructure needs. And if this funding, at least some of it, if not all of it, and that decision has not been made yet, to be clear, but also not only in accomplishing these projects, but also potentially reduce impacts onto the rates, as we move forward. So I think that the idea of identifying areas where there's some flexibility is a good point. I do think Lisa's idea, and then we can get the departments involved as well, as when you say some type of committee, having folks from housing, DPW, IT, at least so we have a process so that it's all been vetted at. I mean, ultimately, the decision, that we're not quite at that point yet. Then we would be, asking probably, it would rest with the select board ultimately to make the, the final decision, but we want to have the appropriate process and reporting and have FinCom review and what have you. So we want to keep this, to Lisa's point, we want to keep this as we have, keep this discussion point on the agenda, because as had been typical fashion during COVID is filled with surprises. For all we know, I mean, the first 50% could come very soon. And I think so we want to start in terms of developing a process. So one of the things we could do, the first thing I could do is I could ask all of the departments, at least through my office, ask all of the departments to identify potential areas and so forth. And we know the infrastructure piece. I mean, at least to start the process, I'm open to other suggestions, how we at least begin to shape the information on the needs. Go ahead, Lisa.
I don't know that all the departments should be involved.
No,
Because this doesn't relate to all the departments.
right, the ones that it relates to, like you mentioned, we know DPW, IT, because there's the broadband connectivity, housing, which would be Alan and Alicia. I'm saying from the department point. I do think having a conversation with the schools, and though they may be getting some other funding, I think that's a good point. Right, we wouldn't be asking areas that aren't eligible.
It may be worthwhile getting the available departments or the affected departments together and putting together like a 3-year capital plan. That
Okay.
way we can, since there's some flexibility in what amount is available to us, we can at least identify and kind of cherry pick what we want to allocate the funds towards. That might give us a little more flexibility, on, as the price tag changes on the amount that we're getting, so that we're not completely saddled into a single direction as we're looking to what to spend the money on.
Now, Scott, I like that idea. I wonder if it might be worth, as part of that process, to create a flexible list, of course, but of infrastructure development improvement demands that are a higher priority than other sorts of things,
Agreed.
and use that as well.
Mhm. Lisa?
I'll just add one thing. Am I, okay, can you hear me? All right, so one of the infrastructure things is broadband, and that may seem like too futuristic. On the other hand, in light of the COVID and what happened this past year, and people having to rely on hotspots for their kids because they cannot afford internet, it's something to think about, I think.
Have the
You
town
know,
become an ISP and provide broadband to all the citizens? Why not?
I mean, I think it's worth discussing.
It's a
Yeah,
little bit pricey, but yeah, and so maybe we involve the library as a possible focal point for public broadband, in this instance. I think, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, I think they did like have their Wi-Fi connection to the outside so that people could go in the parking lot and they could connect to it.
yes.
Yeah, and they had like packets that people could, like little, that they could check out and take with them.
Hotspots.
Mhm.
And okay. The
Go ahead.
schools may have some input for that too, because a
Right.
lot of the students had to work remotely.
So why don't I will propose this, because I'm a firm believer in sort of next steps and moving forward. So on this, for our next meeting in June, and if it happens, sooner, and we can report this at the select board meeting as well, but for the next meeting, why don't Lisa and I will do the following. We'll take the guidance that we have, in other words, the funding, the projects that are eligible and what isn't eligible. We'll get that together and we'll communicate with all departments, with an overview that this funding, it could be used for these period, could identify areas, focus projects, as sort of Scott Hood mentioned, like a 3-year type of capital plan, that we sort of start the ball rolling, and we'll get that information and put it together. So when we meet in June, at least the buy board, we can look at, we'll have some input back. Okay, these are the areas, this is what we heard from the departments, and looking at this, so we can at least start that discussion. In the meantime, and I think we'll get this before the June meeting, so it's going to be June before you know it. Once Lisa and once the town knows, the exact amount, we're obviously going to let you know. 2, when the 50% is coming, that date. And 3rd, we'll continue on the town side to sort of try to get it's not just Ayer, everybody's in this boat, trying to get the further clarification on all of the specifics. Does that seem like a decent sort of?
I think that's a good plan. I think that's the way to go.
Okay. Anything else on the American Recovery Funding for now? Okay. The next item that we have, moving right along, is the review and discussion of new business items. And I sent to the buy board in my email, and just quickly, and I may have, if I forgot one of your new business items, please forgive me, and we'll add it. I looked at, as we've been moving through the budget process, has been a busy time, it's been our main focus. Through the past year, we've had a lot of new business items. And we said that after town meeting and so forth, we wanted to develop a plan to approach these. So real quick, we have the buy board strategy for the elementary school process, which we've talked about this group putting together a formal strategy and process for the fall to approach the school committee. The Devon's wastewater contract negotiations. the American Recovery Act funds, which we sort of just talked about, developing a financial policy for the local cannabis funding that we receive, of the review and update of the financial policies. It's been 3 years, how time flies, and we update those every 3 years. A financial policy for land and real estate acquisition. This had come out of the fall town meeting. A financial policy for the use of the UDAG funds. A review and potential revision of the town's stabilization and capital stabilization policies, given as things have changed, and there was some discussion on that in the late winter, early spring. Financial impacts / analysis of the future Devon's disposition, implementation of the ClearGov platform. And I may have missed some others on that, but those were sort of the major issues that we had. And I think what our goal is now is sort of to develop a plan and maybe divvy up some of the initial prep work on some of these issues moving forward. I sort of took the liberty just real quick of going through the list and thinking of you all in your interests and your roles, and just wanted to give a brief update. And if folks are interested in sort of these informal assignments, and if you're not, that's cool too. I know that the buy board strategy for the elementary school process is one of Selectman Hood's priorities. It's all our priority, but that was one of his ideas. And I think with his leadership and collectively, we should obviously be working to prepare that for the fall. The Devon's wastewater contract negotiations, just so everyone knows, myself, the finance manager, the superintendent of public works, the town engineer, are the negotiating committee, and there was funding to hire a consultant to work with us. We're going to have an update for the select board on this at the next meeting. And we're interfacing with the rate review committee that's meeting next Tuesday. So the Devon's wastewater contract negotiations, that contract expires on December 31st of this year. I see the buy board's role on that, obviously, as we have updates and so forth, keeping you informed and looking for feedback on that. So that process is starting. The American Recovery Act funds we talked about. I think that's ongoing. The financial policy, developing a policy on what you'd use the cannabis funding for, like we did with the meals tax. In talking with Barbara the other day, she had offered to do some initial research with other towns and other entities as to to get some ideas as to what do they use their cannabis funding for, and we may have some ideas here. And the review of the financial policies 3 years ago when we did it, Barbara volunteered to be the sort of custodian of the document, and she has volunteered again unless somebody else would like to be responsible for the central piece. We'll be asking all of you, we're not there yet on this group, to review. We'll be sending it out to departments to review, and then Barbara will be responsible for, revising, collecting all of that information. And I know we've talked, there's some things that need to be changed there. I would volunteer to do the initial work on the land acquisition, because I've in the past have brought most of the land things to town meeting and have worked in developing that. So I would take the initial to put together some thoughts on that for this group. I know the financial policy of the UDAG funds. I know Lisa has been very interested in that, and I was thinking of you, and I'm interested in that. The select board, it involves the select board and FinCom. I think this group as a whole, and the FinCom as well, and the town's financial folks and the select board on, let's review the town's stabilization and capital stabilization policies. Let's look at them. Do we need to adjust them, change them? And maybe there'll be a volunteer to do some preliminary research. On Devon's disposition, I know that Selectman Hood is going to be heading up, and he made a presentation this past Tuesday, the local effort on the Devon's disposition which will involve financial impacts and analysis. I know we'll be looking to departments for help. We'll be looking to this group as well on the financial end. So I think there's an important opportunity there. And then lastly, I will be working with Lisa and Carly and other staff on the whole ClearGov platform implementation as well. So that's sort of an overview. I'll open it up. If I missed something, please let me know. I'll add to the list. Secondly, if there's something you're interested in or not interested in. And then thirdly, we should develop a plan that we're moving forward with these things.
Robert, I just want to say that, yes, I'm happy to be the point person for coordinating everybody's input again for the
Okay.
financial policies. And I have started reaching out via email to see what other folks have out there for cannabis. So
Okay,
Good to go.
Ms. Cabri.
I already have a suggestion about the cannabis one. It's just throwing it out there. We use meals tax to help us fund our OPEB costs.
Yeah,
I think we should think about using some or all of cannabis local sales tax to help us forward fund our pension.
okay.
It's just a suggestion.
I'm glad you brought that up because forward funding of the pension, and everybody's aware that, Kevin, we developed a proposal in town meeting, made those two payments, and we're going to realize those benefits. That's a question, do we want to continue forward funding the pension at those savings? So that's two good points you bring up. One is potentially using cannabis funding, but secondly, I think we need to decide, do we develop a policy on the forward funding of the pension moving forward? So I'll add that to the list.
I agree that using the cannabis for, at the very least, maybe fully funding the OPEB with it. Because there's always some left that we have to take from free cash at the very least. But I do like the idea of forward funding Middlesex with it as well.
Okay. Other thoughts?
Robert, for the two that you listed me for, I'm happy to take the lead on those.
Okay.
I'll take a look at the timing for putting in a letter of intent on the schools, and depending on the timing of that, may prioritize that over the next few months. Because I don't think the Devon's disposition is really going to get going until the fall anyway.
Right, okay. Thank you. Any other initial thoughts? So we've got on the buy board strategy for the elementary school, and this involves all of us, but who the leads are. So Scott, as he just mentioned on the elementary school process, the Devon's wastewater contract negotiations, on this group, obviously, some of us are involved on that, and that'll be more for an update and feedback from this group as we move forward. The American Recovery Funds, we already discussed our initial plan, and that'll be standing for here. Barbara, if for the June meeting, which we haven't set yet, maybe if you have just some initial information you can share with us, an initial update on what you find out on the cannabis funding, that would be great. Just initial, we start.
Sure.
Barbara will get to everybody the existing financial policies. They're on the website, but what I'm getting at is Barbara will be the central point if folks have changes, and like we did last time, everything from the most basic spelling error edit thing to much larger things, and maybe at a future meeting we'll do at least a general overview of the financial policies. But Barbara, thank you for on the point there. I will for the next meeting have hopefully an initial update on some of the land potential land acquisition policy. Lisa, would you and I and others as well maybe take an initial look at the UDAG funds, at least to get some sample ideas on a potential policy on that? I think the review and the potential revision of the town's stabilization, capital stabilization policies not only rest with this group, but with the FinCom at a future meeting. Maybe Lisa and I make a general presentation or something, but we should keep that discussion moving. The Devon's disposition, that's a longer, larger issue, but it's getting started, as Selectman Hood mentioned. So as that moves forward, he'd be sort of the lead on that.
Robert,
then-
as a member of the capital planning committee, I'd be happy to work on the capital and stabilization fund issue.
All right, great. Thank you, Pat. And then we'll have more information. I'll take the lead with Carly and other department and staff resources on the ClearGov platform. Did I miss anything from our previous meetings? I could have, because we always have a lot of new business and great ideas, but did I miss anything? And maybe that's a good segue too into number 7, which is any new business for today. And we know that this list will change, and I'm sure there'll be other things coming to it, but any other thoughts? Yeah, Lisa.
I actually think this is a pretty lofty goal, this list of items, and
Yep.
I can't think of anything else at the moment.
Okay.
But as long as we can move forward on some of it, at least we get
Yeah.
some of it done.
The only thing we mentioned at the last meeting was the high school field project. I don't know if we'd have any input on that, but I just had it in notes for something to look at.
Right. I
It
think when we-
passed, right?
yes, I think
It
when
did.
we last met, the concern was the election hadn't happened. And I think we had
Oh,
brought
okay,
up
maybe
that
that's what it was.
if it
Okay.
failed in Shirley, we would need to be prepared to, okay, what's the plan? But fortunately, it did pass.
It did, yes, yeah.
So
Yes, Lisa.
I'm assuming because there was no assessment for that, would have been put in the copy for the votes anyway. That came down from the school, that just like the high school, middle school renovation, they won't have any first year costs. They'll all roll it into the long-term borrowing. So we won't see an impact until FY23 on our financials. But as far as the issue itself, it's been resolved with Shirley's vote. It's going ahead. The project's going ahead.
Right.
I wonder if it might be interesting to consider using some of these over the transom funds from the federal government to pay forward into the Fields project to reduce the tax impact that it'll have on the citizens.
No. Hello.
Yeah,
It's not
Lisa.
allowed, Pat. The only infrastructure that allowed is water, sewer, and broadband. Nice try, though.
Oh, well,
I have
nothing
that
ventured,
thought too,
nothing gained, right?
the water sewer broadband.
I'm sorry, go
see
ahead.
this?
Scott. Hold
So the
on.
cost for the field is approximately 2.5 million per Dr. Malone, and that's at I think a 3% interest rate. So she did say that she should have final numbers to us over the next couple of weeks, which I'm anticipating would be probably next week at some point. Once we do get the final numbers, we should put together an impact analysis for the taxpayers and get that on the town website.
Okay, good point. We can definitely do that. Lisa,
And
go ahead.
waiting for my block. Can you hear me? All right.
can
So,
hear you.
and at the same time, Scott, I agree with you, but because we do that all the time for the taxpayers. But we could consider using some capital stabilization to fund that. I would never suggest wipe it out, but
Right.
using some towards that project, that can be a future discussion because it's really next year's budget item.
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Any other on this? So what I'll do is, it'll take me a day or so. I'll send sort of an update of our list and sort of the assignments, so we're all on the same page, and we'll keep that going forward.
Sounds good.
All right. So was there any other new business that is not related to project or anything that needs to be brought up here? Okay, and then the scheduling of the next meeting. would take us into June. And we've generally been doing Thursdays at 2. Would be either Thursday, folks looking ahead, either Thursday, the 17th or Thursday, the 24th of June.
The 24th
Hmm.
looks better on the townwide calendar. If that
Okay.
works for people, just FYI.
Either one works for me.
Yeah, it's fine with me.
All right, so, okay,
Fine with
we'll
me.
plan for the 24th. That'll give us just about a month. So June 24th at 2 PM, June 24th, 2 PM. And as always, as we get closer, I'll send out asking if anybody has any agenda items. I'll get the minutes from this meeting to everybody. And like I said, I'll send out an updated of our list with the assignments.
Are we still gonna have remote participation at that point?
So that's a good question. So as of right now, and just real quick, the state of emergency ends on June 15th for the governor. And the emergency provisions of the open meeting law were tied into the ending of the emergency last year in the legislation. So if you read as of today, when the state of emergency ends on June 16th, the day after, on June 16th, there wouldn't be any emergency provisions, so we'd be back to in-person meetings. There is a caveat that we understand that legislation is being filed to address that in coming up with some type of a hybrid approach and so forth. So we will keep everybody updated, Scott, and I think we'll talk about this at the select board meeting once we get more information. As it stands right today, we'd be back in person, but will we have an option, a local option for hybrid or to continue the remote, to be determined?
Yeah, if we don't have the remote option, then we would honestly have to move the meeting later in the day to a different time.
Yeah. So that's a good point that Scott brought up. Why don't, for right now, assuming the status quo, we'll put June 24th at 2 PM. To Scott's point, if we have to go back, if we go back to in-person meetings, I do realize that Zoom enabled some of you, such as Scott, to be able to participate at 2. We may have to go back to later in the day like we did pre-COVID. So we'll have an update on that. Sound good?
Yes, sir.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Sounds like you got a busy month, Robert.
Never a dull moment.
No, never.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move we adjourn.
Second,
Motion's been made by Pat Diamond and seconded by Scott Hood to adjourn the buy board. Roll call, Lisa Gabri. Pat Diamond,
Aye.
Mark Smith,
Aye.
Carly Antonellis,
Aye.
Barbara Tierney,
Aye.
Scott Hood,
aye.
and Robert Pomperian says aye. We are adjourned at 2:49 PM. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone.